Assalamu alaikum, friends. Today's heart-wrenching story revolves around a woman who kept all the secrets of her life hidden from her husband, which led to her death in her youth. But what were her unpleasant secrets? Let's find out in today's video. Her husband says, "Just 2 days after our wedding, my wife passed away. When I went to bury her, a black cat was roaming around her grave. I thought the cat might live there. Every day when I went to her grave, the cat would sit on the grave and cry, wanting to move the earth. I mentioned this to the mufti, who ordered me to dig up the grave. When I did, my heart sank. Let me start from the beginning. At the wedding, my wife was veiled. I was very happy that I had found a virtuous wife. I was happy because until now, I had never had any illicit relations with a woman. So, I also got a virtuous wife. Before going to my own room after the wedding, a cousin of mine whose parents had passed away in childhood and who lived with us stopped me and said, "Brother, I know you are very happy that you have a virtuous wife. However, she may have a past just like you. After all, as the saying goes, a husband gets a wife of his own kind." This is true, but I didn't pay much attention to it. I had repented to Allah regarding my past. If she had committed any sins, she too must have repented. Hearing this, my cousin laughed and said, "How do you know she really repented?" I replied, "Don't misunderstand me. I have faith in Allah. I believe my wife is surely virtuous." He said, "All right, brother, you go ahead. You are very happy now, so you only think of your wife. I alone know the real truth." I said, "All right then. I don't want to hear this nonsense." I moved forward, though my cousin's words had made me very angry. However, when I saw my wife in her attire, all my anger disappeared. A wife in such a form is waiting only for her husband, someone who loves her. But I did not know that my life was about to become a torment. When I went to my wife, she spoke to me soothingly and comforted my heart. She said she would spend her whole life being loyal to me and would not make any demands. My wife was very good. I gave her many gifts upon seeing her face, and she was delighted. We spent the night talking about our love. The next morning, someone knocked on the door, but when I opened it, no one was there. I was surprised how a door could knock on its own. It must be a human's doing. I became very concerned about the matter. When I mentioned it to my wife, her face showed great worry, as if she was very troubled. She said it might have been someone knocking on the door as a prank. I couldn't figure out who would do such a thing. My wife went outside, laid out a prayer mat, and began praying. I was very pleased with her devotion to Allah. At that time, my mother came and said, "Son, There's a problem only you can solve. I wondered what the problem could be. My mother said, "Someone has stolen all the foods from the house. There is nothing to eat. Your wife's behavior is not good. Someone has stolen all our foods." I was astonished. I asked, "Who steals foods these days, Mother?" She replied, "Don't lecture me. I know this is all because of your wife. Go to the market quickly and buy some foods. We need to prepare breakfast." I went to the market and bought all the items. As I was returning home, I heard a scream near the house. It sounded like a woman's scream, almost like my wife's. I quickly went to the door and rang the bell, but no one opened it. I became very anxious. Eventually, I started kicking the door. Still, no one opened it. I then called my mother and cousin, but neither answered. Suddenly, my mother opened the door. I asked, "Why wasn't anyone opened the door? I've been standing outside for a long time. Don't you know? You sent me to get foods. And what was that scream from inside? Did you say anything to my wife?" My mother said, "No, son. What could I say to your wife? I was in the washroom, so I was late." Saying this, she went inside, but she couldn't meet my gaze, as if she was hiding something from me. I hurried to my room and saw my wife sitting comfortably. I asked her what happened. My wife replied, Nothing happened here." I said, "I was banging on the door for a long time and you didn't open it. Why?" She said, "It was my mistake. I'll be the one to open the door from now on." I asked her, "Then why did I hear screams coming from here? Who was screaming?" My wife, frightened, said she didn't know anything. I told her at least she could tell me who made that noise because I was sure it came from our house. She said, "You might think so, but nothing happened." I was amazed by her words. It took a long time to prepare the food with the items I had bought. My wife had been out of the room for over an hour and still had not come out of the kitchen. I went to see what was happening. My mother had said I couldn't punish any of my wife's faults. She would do all the cooking and cleaning herself. On the first day of our marriage, my wife went into the kitchen to prepare breakfast. An hour had passed, and I went to check on her. As I was about to leave the room, I saw the door was locked from the outside. I was astonished. Who would lock the door from the outside? I knocked on the door several times, but it still didn't open. I called my cousin, asking him to open the door. When he arrived and opened it, he said, "The door was already open, brother. I think you're losing your mental balance." My cousin's words irritated me. I went to the kitchen and found my wife comfortably preparing breakfast. I took out my frustration on my cousin, and he, laughing, said, "Brother, I thought you were intelligent, but now it seems I need to explain everything to you. You will understand your wife's true nature soon. I asked, "What do you mean?" He said, "Just wait a little longer. You will soon discover your wife's true form." Saying this, he left. Soon after, I was looking for my wife but couldn't find her. Finally, I saw her coming out of my cousin's room. Seeing her like that made me feel bad and suspicious. She should not have gone to my cousin's room on the first day of the marriage. I asked her, "Why did you go to my cousin's room?" She seemed startled. At first, she avoided eye contact, but then said, "I went there to clean." I asked, "What was the need to clean so early? And how did you know how many rooms there are in this house?" She replied, "If I can prepare breakfast from the first day, why can't I clean?" I also started cleaning the house. I didn't like the idea that my mother had said my wife would cook breakfast from now on. I wanted to talk to my wife, but she remained silent and gloomy. Even when I tried to speak with her, she avoided me. Despite my efforts all day, she remained unhappy until evening. Her eyes were filled with tears. My mood soured at dinner. I asked my wife, "Why are you still sulking and being stubborn?" She said, "For the sake of Allah, leave me at home. I beg you, don't keep me in this house anymore." I was angry and said, "What are you trying to say? Why are you making such requests?" She said, "I can't stay here anymore. I request you either move to a separate house or take me back to my parents." I asked her if she was having any difficulties staying here. She lowered her head and said, "No, but I want a new home where I can live comfortably and peacefully." I asked, "What kind of peace do you need that is lacking in this house?" I told her to pack her bag and I would take her to her parents. Upon hearing this, she looked at me in surprise. She packed her bag and I took it to the car. I then dropped her off at her father's house and told him, "Father-in-law, my wife wants to stay with you for a while. She missed you very much." I didn't tell them about the conflict between my wife and me. I then went home. As soon as I arrived, my cousin said, "Why did you need to leave your wife at her parents' house? Women say such things, but you need to control your wife. But you can't even handle your wife. When everyone finds out that you left your wife at her parents' house the day after the wedding, what will they say? A husband who follows his wife's words is called a dancing monkey. You're quite something, brother. I didn't expect this from you." My cousin then went to his room. I heard him arguing on the phone with someone, and he seemed very angry. I went to my room, but after some time, my cousin said something that made me suspicious. While we were having dinner, my mother asked, "Where has your wife gone?" Before I could say anything, my cousin replied, Aunt, do you remember our friend Bakar's marriage? He got married 3 years ago. My mother said, Yes, but why are you bringing him up now? My cousin continued, His wife also used to frequently visit her parents' house. Later, it was discovered that she was meeting her lover there. When a woman repeatedly insists on going to her parents' house, the husband should realize that there must be a reason behind it. Women don't leave their husband's home and stay at their parents' place for no reason. Brother, I think your wife might have a lover too. Otherwise, she wouldn't go to her parents' house over such a small issue. There must be something behind it. I told him, Stop talking nonsense. I have complete faith in my wife. He said, Brother, of course you have faith. You're blinded by her love. But we aren't blind. We see everything. I got irritated by what my cousin was saying. I told him, I'm going to bring my wife back from there right now, this very moment, and if you say another word after that, it won't be good for you. As I was about to leave, my cousin, laughing, said, Your wife returned a little while ago, and you don't even know about it. See for yourself. She didn't think it was necessary to inform you. I was shocked to hear this. If she had returned, why hadn't she come to see me? Why was she avoiding me? I was at home too. I was in my mother's room. Maybe she was in our room. I immediately went to our room. What I saw there made me break out in a cold sweat. I found my wife lying face down on the bed, unconscious. There was a piece of paper near her hand. Her entire body had turned blue. It looked like she had fainted. When I went closer and turned her over, I realized that her soul had left her body. My wife had died. I was stunned. When I started reading the paper next to her, the ground beneath my feet seemed to give way. What she had written in that letter was enough to shake anyone to their core. She wrote, I apologize to my husband because I have to leave this world. I am ashamed of myself. My character is not good enough for me to look into my husband in the eye. He loves me very much, but before marriage, I had relationships with many boys. I don't consider myself worthy of my husband. So today, I am ending my life. After reading this, I felt like the ground beneath my feet was slipping away. Tears welled up in my eyes. I couldn't accept this betrayal from my wife, and on top of that, I couldn't accept her death. This news spread through the village like wildfire. Everyone gathered at our house. When her parents learned about the letter, they were shocked too. They said, "This is all lies. Our daughter was very pure. We will investigate this because it cannot be true. Our daughter was very righteous. She never even looked up at a boy in her life. This letter cannot be my daughter's. I was torn between listening to my wife's family and managing my own grief. I decided to leave my wife's situation in Allah's hands. We took her body to the cemetery for burial. My wife's father was very upset with me. He didn't even want to speak to me, as if he suspected me of being responsible for his daughter's death. Even though I found the letter next to her body, they didn't believe a word I said. So, I stayed silent. I didn't want to carry any more burden of sorrow, so I stopped paying attention to what anyone said. Then, something happened that lifted the veil of misunderstanding from my eyes, and it happened completely by coincidence. While we were burying my wife, 2 black cats were circling around her grave. I thought they might just live in the cemetery and had wandered over. In the evening, when everyone had returned to their homes, I went to pray at my wife's grave. For some reason, all the events seemed like a lie to me. It felt like there had to be some reason behind her suicide. Coincidentally, those same 2 cats were crying near my wife's grave. For a moment, I was scared. As I was about to leave, the cats started digging at the grave with their paws, moving the dirt. I was astonished at this sight. The 2 cats circled the grave. I thought I should talk to an Islamic scholar or cleric about this. There might be some other reason behind all this. I told the Imam about the incident. He recited prayers at the grave and then sat there for a while. The cats were still circling the grave. The Maulvi Sahib then said, "The grave should be opened." At that time, one of my friends was also present with me. We were both terrified, but the grave digger bravely started digging the grave. As soon as the grave was opened, we saw that my wife's hands and feet were moving. Her face appeared as though she was breathing. Seeing this, I was utterly shocked. We immediately took my wife to the hospital. The astonishing thing was that those 2 cats had vanished. I saw them leaving the cemetery. After taking my wife to the hospital, the doctor said, "Your wife has gone into a coma. It could take a week, a month, or even years for her to wake up. Pray for her recovery. She's been through a lot." I sat by my wife's side, praying for her because I wanted to know the truth. 15 days later, my wife regained consciousness, and on that very day, my cousin disappeared. Perhaps he thought that my wife would reveal the truth to me, and indeed she did. My wife told me that from the first day of our marriage, my cousin had been threatening her. He tried to behave inappropriately with her when he found her alone in a room. She used to scream and shout, but she was too afraid to tell me. My cousin knew her before our marriage, as they attended the same college. Even back then, he used to bother her. He knew my wife was a simple and innocent girl who was afraid of men. My cousin took advantage of this and continued to harass her even after our marriage. When my wife returned home that evening after visiting her parents, my cousin tried to assault her. But as they say, when Allah protects someone, no one can harm them. Even the whole world together cannot hurt them. My wife told me that after thinking of me, she returned home that evening. But when my cousin found her alone in the room, he approached her and tried to act indecently. In a fit of anger, my wife slapped him, so he hit her with a large stick. Though the blow did not cause her head to bleed, it did put her into a coma, and we mistakenly thought she had died. My cousin had then placed that fake letter beside my wife, so we would misunderstand her after reading it. But I kept thinking about those 2 cats. When I mentioned them to my wife, she told me they were her pet cats, which she had taken care of until the marriage. They are now at her parents' home. She had nurtured them with great love and care, and they were very loyal to my wife and her family. I was amazed to hear this and began to think about how Allah saved my wife through those 2 cats. I immediately prostrated in gratitude. Undoubtedly, Allah is the master of this world. He can do whatever He wills. My wife is now completely healthy, but my cousin is still on the run because this has become a case of attempted murder. A year has passed since that incident. My cousin was caught a month later, and he is now serving his sentence in prison for his sins. I am now living a happy life with my mother and wife. The lesson we learn from this story is that we need to teach our daughters how to protect themselves. If someone bothers them, they should not be afraid to resist and should be able to tell their husbands or parents about it. Friends, this story was translated from an Urdu channel into English, but we are not sure how true it is. However, the story was very good. If you liked the video, please like and comment on it. Turn on the bell icon for more such videos.